Welcome to the Great Basin Prescribed Fire and Smoke Transport Briefing for Friday, January 23rd. Currently, there's quite a bit of prescribed fire occurring across the Great Basin at different elevations. We have been very warm and dry recently, or at least very dry in most areas. However, we do still have some snow on the ground, mainly in the higher elevations. Over the last 1 to 2 weeks, we haven't really seen any precipitation in the last week, and even over the last 2 weeks, any precipitation we have seen over parts of Idaho, Utah, and into southern Nevada and the Arizona Strip has been well below normal. So obviously no new snow over the last 72 hours, and the snow depth is indicated on the right, with mainly snow on the ground at higher elevations of the Sierra and up into central and far eastern Idaho and Wyoming. We do have some snow still on the ground in Utah, but that area has seen certainly much less overall snowpack. And you can see the current snowpack percentages here, obviously well below normal in a lot of areas, but some areas that are doing okay are central and eastern Idaho into Wyoming, where snowpack is near normal. And parts of the Sierra have been dropping off just with the drier conditions, but were near normal and have kind of slid just below normal. But otherwise, the rest of Nevada into Utah and down into Arizona, just well below normal with the snowpack as conditions have been pretty bleak. With the very dry conditions we've seen recently, the 6-week evaporative demand drought index showing more of a flash drought or quick changes to drought shows obviously we are seeing significant drought changes across much of the Great Basin. This obviously will impact prescribed burning, so always something to keep in mind when we do have those drier years and you are doing any type of prescribed burning, especially if we start to get wind, your fire might behave a little bit differently than you would normally expect in January. And going along with that, looking at our fuel conditions, not surprising with the very dry conditions and lack of snow in many areas, we are seeing a continued decline in our 100-hour fuel moisture. ERCs are also continuing to increase. So looking at really much of the Great Basin, in many areas, we're seeing 100-hour fuel moistures approaching maximum or minimums for the time of year over the next 7 days. Although that's obviously well outside of critical, so no major concerns with wildfires, but it is something to keep in mind with prescribed burning that conditions are just certainly much drier than what we would normally see. So looking at our current conditions, our satellite feature, you can see an area of low pressure off the Southern California coast that will continue pushing eastward. We are getting quite a bit of cloud cover also with the system dropping down from the north into the Rockies. So a lot of cloud cover, but not really a lot of precipitation expected in many areas. So looking at how things will change going through the day to day, again, we will see a lot of cloud cover across the Great Basin as that low pushes eastward. We are seeing fairly light winds, so we will have lots of pockets of poor inversions. So also something obviously to keep in mind with the prescribed burning is the air quality. We are seeing really just a poor air quality in a lot of areas where we have some of our basins. Looking at the winds for later today, so not super light winds, but we're looking at kind of in the light to low end moderate in some areas, especially into the higher terrain of Utah and parts of Idaho. Otherwise, mixing heights remaining low to moderate. Today, temperatures will be above normal over western and southern areas of the Great Basin, a little bit closer to normal in the north, but those really cold temperatures we've been lucky enough to see much of those stay further east, kind of along and east of the divide, but certainly parts of Wyoming getting a little bit colder. Relative humidity, no real concerns across the Great Basin. As we move into Saturday, the main trough across the northern Rockies pushes further south and east, so it will push a lot of our moisture off to the south and east with much drier conditions returning and ridging off the west coast. This will also bring generally weak wind flow and poor air quality to parts of western Nevada, but with this trough dropping south, it will increase the wind flow over much of southern and eastern Nevada into Utah and Idaho and improving some of those conditions temporarily. So we move into Saturday, we will see a little bit stronger winds in the south as this system moves south. So again, the improved air quality, we will see some gusty winds maybe in the 20s, something to keep in mind again with the dry conditions. However, relative humidities will be on the higher side for most areas, at least not critical. And mixing heights will also improve. So you can see relative humidity will drop a little bit tomorrow from what we'll see today, but still kind of remaining above that 18 to 20%. And then temperatures will be cooling as that trough and weak cold front slides south. So we will see maybe a 10-degree drop over western Nevada. As we move into Sunday, we do continue to have some troughing across the region moving eastward, so it will help keep our dispersion a little bit higher over the eastern half of the Great Basin. And you can see that's obviously where the gustier winds will be. So we will see some breezy winds along and on the east slopes of the central Utah mountains and up into western Wyoming. So again, something to keep in mind, although we will see certainly much higher mixing heights, so definitely better air quality. As we move into Sunday, we will see still those cooler temperatures across the eastern half of the region and somewhat warmer southern and western areas, with the driest relative humidities over the southern half of the region. And then looking at our overall precipitation, the only precipitation really will occur over parts of Utah into the Arizona Strip, and otherwise further west and north we'll just see cloud cover, but even these are fairly modest amounts. As we go into next week, we will see ridging across much of the west, at least along the west coast. That will start moving eastward into the Great Basin, so it will give us much lighter winds, warmer temperatures, poor inversion, or poor air quality with those inversions setting up again. So again, kind of a return to our fairly benign weather pattern going into early next week. And then by the middle of next week, we might see a little bit of, perturbations to the flow, bringing some cloud cover, but really no precipitation expected. You can see that with the 7-day precipitation, looks very similar to the 3-day. And then the 8 to 14-day outlook showing above normal temperatures and below normal precipitation through the early part of February. It doesn't look like it might be closer to the middle of February when we maybe start seeing some storms. So definitely not a great outlook for our snow conditions, so something to keep in mind going forward. That concludes our webcast for today. Check back on Monday for the latest updates.